Beat that. Jesus. I don't know about you folks.
My son.
We'll get to the guy behind the screen in a second. He's right behind here. The wall. We have to keep behind the wall. But frankly speaking, I don't know about you guys and gals, but I'm pissed. I mean, I just am at the point now where I it's almost as if Trump's president again. It's, all the euphoria after Biden's victory, and then these past 3 or 4 months, he did get one bill passed, but then after that, we see where this thing is going. And tonight we're going to talk about quite a few things, but they're not friendly topics, okay? And I know I'm angry, and if I'm angry, that usually means my co-host David Price is angry too. So let's check in on him and see just how angry he is.
Well, hi, Brian. Hi, everybody. Listen, I'm not so angry, but I am scared. That beginning, Jiminy Crickets, that scared the living bejesus out of me.
I hope it did, because that's the type of mood I'm in. And I saved that type of imagery for these types of shows. I did this a little bit long time ago, but when I'm angry and I feel that we're headed into the morass again, that's the intro I need.
Well, Brian, I'm afraid that intro, we might have to run that until we get the results of the 2022 midterm. Of the duo here, you're the pessimist, supposedly. I'm the optimist. And I will say this, it is very hard to be optimistic these days. But, I'm the storyteller too. So I just want to comment. I really did like that beginning, by the way.
I threw that together pretty quickly. I don't like doing that, but it sometimes works out better when I do that.
But the only thing I could equate it to, I was scared. You heard the scream. That was real.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the show, The Outer Limits.
Yes.
Of course, Twilight Zone is more famous. And, that's a great argument. It's like, do you like the Rolling Stones or the Beatles better? To say who likes it. And I love the Twilight Zone, but I think at one point I was more an Outer Limits fan. And I still remember the first night that it came on, and my mother wasn't home, my father wasn't home. Being an only child, I was there. And the show had just gone off, and it wasn't really that scary that night. But I heard a knock on the door, and I went out there. And this is a terrible thing to say, but I have to say it. It was a mother of my friend, and she looked to be 114 years old. And I screamed, and that's kind of the feeling I had tonight. I think, and that's kind of a feeling I have. Sometimes I think we're in the outer limits. Sometimes I think we're in the Twilight Zone. What I fail to see is us being in the America that I believe should be and could be. So, Brian, we've been starting the show this way, and I think it's a good way to start. You've kind of indicated what your mood is, which is angry. I certainly can understand that. But what's made you angry, or what issues do you see this week that have made you with some trepidation and anger or anger? What's going on? What do you see?
That's a fair question, and I guess I have to give you a fair answer. whenever I have this type of mood, it usually exists on two levels, Dave. I usually have this philosophical view, and then I have this logical view of what I see, this empirical view of what I'm experiencing with my eyes. So in that sense, I'm sort of like the empiricist and the philosopher at the same time, and that's a bad combination. So I was watching a Charles Bukowski, very, very short video, and I'll show you. It's only a few seconds long, where he speaks about how dumb people really
You
are.
said he and Charles. You got a last name on Charles?
Bukowski.
I know it was Bukowski, but
Yeah,
because
Bukowski.
I know that we both are fans of his.
And then I'm going to
but-
show you something with Jim Acosta was interviewing Marjorie Taylor Greene. And,
oh yes, I saw that also.
And Mo Brooks. And it's not so much that I'm surprised at anything that they've done, but it's what's happening now. It's the idea that somehow the Democrats, they're trying to come up with the perfect sentence to say that's going to convince Joe Manchin to do this or do that. And I just feel like I'm trapped in this pit. And you're an intelligent person. You see sky up there, but you're 40 feet down. There's no ladder, and you've got to figure something out. And it doesn't look like there's anything that you can do. I mean, you may just be able to just grab a rock and throw it at your tormentors or something. I don't know, or throw it at yourself. But I am so angry. So I think what I'll do is I'll show you just a clip or two.
Sure.
One from just my philosophical experience, and then we'll relate because he goes into evolution a little bit, but it's only a minute and a half long. But you'll see where I'm coming from about the ignorance of people, and then and myself too. I mean, I can't say that I'm outside of that. And then we'll look at that clip from Jim Acosta, Dave, and I hopefully you'll have seen that. Okay, so I'm going to switch scenes here, go back to myself, and I'm going to see if I can. All right. Hopefully you'll be able to.
There's Charles.
Yeah, and this is, I think, here's more my it's my philosophy in general, but I think it plays into my thinking. Okay, so just some of my philosophical ideas.
Nature's not kind. Nature doesn't give a fuck, man. And I give a fuck. So when I see something happening, something else killing something else, I don't like it. But the real intelligent people say, well, that's the way it is, you see. This is killing that, and this is feeding that, and there's the grasshopper, there's this feeds upon that, it's all arranged. Except when something jumps upon them, they scream, don't they? You see, they don't get themselves in with the spider and the fly. I got myself in. I'm the fly, that's the spider, you see. They don't get themselves into, they're indifferent to what's happening. Oh, that's interesting, look. But you see, they too are involved. But the only thing is that there's a human going to kill them. But they don't know it. They're arranging it, but they don't know it.
And that
They're dumb. They're dumb.
That arranging.
Almost all.
I'm gonna just kind of skip that for now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it ties into my philosophy about evolution in general. The idea is it's a horrible system, and you and I have talked about it, David. I think we both agree upon that. But it's more than that. I think Bukowski's right. It's the idea that people always take themselves outside of the system, and when you see what's going on, it's an extreme danger right now. We're ready for the red button to be pushed, and anybody who thinks you can just kind of play with this thing and hope that it's going to kind of work its way out, we're going to need some type of Herculean effort to stop these bastards. So. A lot of people who, and by their own right, they have to work 9 to 5 or whatever it is they can't be bothered with a lot of these things. But in reality, it's what Bukowski says. It's going to kill them, and it'll be too late because there's going to be other humans killing them. And in this case, in this particular case, what I'm talking about is the Republican Party, and those in the Republican Party are pretty stupid too, because they go along with this hook, line, and sinker, except they're the killers. You see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I think that some people would argue, Brian, that your analogy doesn't work, and I'm not one of them. I think it does work. I will say it. I'll put it this way: the Republican Party, or what is the Republican Party today. I don't think that was the Republican Party necessarily of 2015, although the Republican Party in 2015 I disagreed with. Certainly is now the Trumpublican Party, or that's how I view it. But I'm going to talk some more tonight about why that isn't exactly accurate, even though I just said it now. Yeah, I mean, I don't, I mean, okay. I kind of grew up saying, okay, it's not nice to hate people, right?
Well, it was okay
yeah,
to hate Nazis, right?
Well, I agree, and you're absolutely right. And then that's when I started looking at things like, who should you hate? And if initially in this Trumpian era, I didn't hide behind words. I just didn't want to say hate, right? So I'd say I despise, I detest, I deplore, and I wasn't showing off my vocabulary. I was just, as I look back on it, I was just saying hate is so strong. Is that really the word you want to use? And tonight I say I hate Republicans. And I really, in fact, I think it was Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis. I mean,
he hit it today. And I went to, I don't know if you saw my comment, and I said, right on. I mean, yes, absolutely right. And it was basically along those ideas. I said, to me, at this point, hatred of three things: Donald Trump, professionally, personally, as a human being, any lot. The only moral, ethical, and spiritual reaction that one should hold to him is absolute hate.
Right. You should hate evil,
Well, yes, that's true, Brian. And then the second group Anthony talked about are his fixers.
Right.
And I may even hate them more than Trump. I certainly don't give Trump any excuses, but you and I've talked at length and ad infinitum about fate and DNA and what you get. And I've always kind of subscribed to the fact that we are shaped by forces beyond our control that happen when we are young and through life. But, in Trump, I waive that fixers. But I'm also, maybe I direct my most hatred to the Republican elected officials, not just at the national level, but at the state level, who are amassing this power that if we allow them to continue, the Constitution will be gone. The Bill of Rights will be gone. And basically everything that we know that has ever been
right.
Good
We're going to lose
about
everything.
America, everything good about America. And look, I'm the first one to say there's a whole hell of a lot of bad, and I'm going to depth in that a little bit later in America. But, in balance, in toto, we've done some good things. Okay, we have. I think the bad actually outweighs the good. But the reason that does so much is we have this wonderful, philosophical framework, I guess, or political framework for the type of nation we should be. We've just never achieved it. So, Brian, and of course, I like Mr. Bukowski, not only for his thought, but he's a hellacious writer. Sort of came out of that.
He's very direct.
He always was as a writer. I mean, of course,
and it's easier to read. People like us, and as he said, the atomic age. There has to be a different type of writing, so it has. He said, boom, right there, get right to the point.
And he was definitely onto something there. Now, great writers can still write around that in terms of, but I don't know. I use this comparison on this show. I use it all the time. On one hand, you have three types of. Well, that's okay. Let me reduce it to three types. You have many types of writing, but you have Fitzgerald, which is pretty much poetical. That was pretty much, he was the poet. These are all writing at the contemporary times. You have William Faulkner, who is damn hard to understand, but is probably, if you're looking at the South and that type of thing, human nature down there is as good as it gets, but it's a lot to digest. And then you have Hemingway, who's in the Bukowski school. Hemingway, they went. They saw the elephant. The elephant was white, right? And whether we want to or not, sometimes attention spans are lessening. And if anyone doesn't believe that, I always suggested this to my students. I suggested to anyone tonight, go and grab letters written by Civil War soldiers, not the generals, right? The soldiers, and see the vocabulary that they had and the words that they had, and realize that most of these people never even got to 8th grade. Now, I'm not faulting the school system. I'm just saying we become more direct. And what happens is, really, think about it, Brian. And this we can't turn this one back. Once upon a time, as recently as the late 19th and even to some extent the early 20th century, writing and speaking were the way, and reading were the way that we had to communicate ideas. Now we have radio, which is, of course, is listening. We have television, movies, and while they're a combination of all those, we have the internet, and on top of that, we have the immediacy of social media. So, I don't like the sound bites. That's why I don't. One of the reasons, one of the 472,000 reasons why I don't watch the news on TV. But I understand why they have to be there. But the difference is Bukowski, using, in essence, sound bites, but they're written sound bites, gets his point across, right?
Right, but doesn't he make a good point, though, that, let's just take what he would call the older style, that,
Right.
People beat around the bush to get where they want to go. As he said, he was lying near the red roses with the blush, and then finally when he gets to what the meat of what he or she is trying to say, it's a letdown because it wasn't it. And I get that, because there's sometimes when I read it and I say, you know what, if nobody taught me, how to read this particular novel, and I was just reading it, yeah, I mean, some of these sentences just drag on. And was this necessary? And maybe it is because I'm a product of things that are, as you say, sound bites.
And what's interesting is you tackle reading that really I kind of shy away from, other than I try to read some things that I should or must or really understand. And that's the Russian writers, who are brilliant. But they, again...
And the language itself is more direct, the Russian language.
Right.
They don't use articles.
No, right.
They get things out of the way.
And of course, you can read it I have to read it in translation. You can read it in Russian. And of course, anything loses something in translation. But I think the idea being that Bukowski was talking about his time and what he saw. And the reason that I kind of believe that that's eternal truth is it's reflected in every time, and especially in our time. Again, one of my favorite sayings, I said it almost every day for 3 years when I was doing guided tours at the museum. We hear the term history repeats itself. That is not true. It is absolutely not true. History does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And what I had to explain that to someone today. And they said, well, what's that mean? I said, well, okay, basically think of this. In other words, to repeat itself, it has to be exact, right?
Right. If you do this, this will happen.
Well, and every time. But what happens is in the different ages. Now, again, I think this is a little tangential, but it may be somewhat germane to what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm doing a lot of research right now for this first of my hopefully many, but at least one. If I don't get fired, maybe more. Walk and talks, I call them, but they're tours, guided tours for the Smithsonian. It's an honor to do them. I think I'm kind of playing in the major leagues. I don't know if I deserve it, but I got the position, so I'll do the best I can. And one of the things that is going to be in the beginning of that tour is the fact in 1925, the Ku Klux Klan, 25,000 members of the Ku Klux Klan marched or rode down Pennsylvania Avenue, right? And most of them did not have their hoods on because they wanted to show that. Well, okay, that's pretty bad. But people don't realize, as you go back, there's actually 4 times the Klan has come to a resurgence, right? The first time, Nathan Bedford Forrest, the Confederate general, didn't really like losing. And he certainly didn't like black people in Tennessee. So he and some others came up with the idea of the Klan. So the first time is post-Civil War and Reconstruction, right? Dies down a little bit. Now, in the 1920s, that's really up until maybe forever, but was known as the golden age of the Klan. Um, it was all over America. Basically, though, what was so interesting, it was really located in the states today, uh, some in the South, but it moved into those Midwest states we talk about all the time, but also very active in New Jersey, in rural New Jersey and rural Pennsylvania, not so much in New York. And that was this, and it kind of, that was kind of its moment in 1925. So say from 20 to 25, then it kind of simmers down again, and it surfaces again in the civil rights movement, right? And a little different, but still the same. So this is history rhyming, not repeating. And finally, with the blessing of the great white father, Donald Trump, it is back today. So I look for things like you had with the good Mr. Bukowski there. Look at things that are kind of eternal truths, understanding that some things might change. And definitely, he's speaking to each and every one of us today, although he was talking about his time. So once again, we have something rhyming but true.
Right, right. So Dave, I did want to show you and our audience one other video that I'm sure some of you have already seen, but it's just the way that these people respond to questions. I know they don't like Jim Acosta. Okay, we know that because Trump never liked Acosta.
May I? Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to interject something there because, again, when I was working at the museum, I had the chance to meet just about every news person who has any show originating from Washington, D.C., right? Or any even reports from Washington, D.C. And one of those was Jim Acosta. And hey, Keith. What I'd like to say about that, and again, this is just my personal thing. Jim Acosta, if you get him alone, which I was able to do there, and we had some time to talk and just sit there. He is not only is he a marvelous journalist, but he's just a warm, decent human being. So I kind of, again, nothing would surprise me that the Republicans would do, but I mean, I can honestly, I'm not saying anyone else would have to take my word for it, but they're attacking not only a good newsman, but they're also attacking a good person. And that doesn't surprise me, right? But I would certainly attest to his character as much as you can of meeting a person a couple times and spending, maybe an hour talking to him. But so I did see this, but I want to see it again.
Yeah.
Oh, but the other thing I wanted to say is we're gonna change Mo Brooks' name. There shouldn't be Mo Brooks. There should be No More Brooks. So No Mo is going to be his name now. No Mo Brooks. We don't like Mr. Brooks. Mr. Brooks is an asshole. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
All right. By the way, it's just a little tidbit here. Is that Ronnie was friends with Al Franken's cousin, and so many years ago when he was beginning at Saturday Night Live, she met Al Franken. It wasn't a good experience because it was late at night, and he says, "Yeah, I'll take you over to see my cousin Al," and it wasn't good. Anyway, long story short, because she's friends with this Al Franken's cousin on Facebook, they through the cousin, Jim Acosta's friends. Then Ronnie became friends with Jim Acosta. Now they don't talk.
No, I know. Well, no,
it's nice enough to accept it. I wouldn't even have requested his friendship, but he's a good guy. I mean, anybody that Trump doesn't like must be a good guy.
But this is for my, I'm very careful about saying. I mean, I don't pick everybody on the left necessarily as a good guy,
right?
Or as a good girl. In this case, that goes beyond any,
He
the
took
enemy
a lot of abuse.
Well,
right?
This is beyond the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
This is a person who's just a good. So yes, that's true. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, but this is a person that where the circumstances different, where we equals, or maybe if I was still in journalism, or whatever, we could be friends. I was that impressed
Yeah, he
with
seems
him
like
as a person.
So
Yeah.
he's still
Okay,
unique. So anyway, here we go.
Is it before you do this? One last thing, Brian. I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry, but I don't care. Is it true that you secretly are somewhat divided because you really have lustful thoughts toward the Georgia Miss Taylor Greene? Is that true, or is that a false representation of where you stand?
Let's just say things move inward when I think of her.
Okay. So what you're telling me is
nothing's.
So what you're telling me is, if anyone told me that, they would be speaking in falsehoods.
The volcano is not going to be erupting. It's going to be dormant. Okay, if that's.
And I assume it definitely won't be erupting for Mo Brooks, right?
Definitely not. I mean, though I'd like to throw him in a volcano. That's what I would.
Certainly. There's something to make us smile. Go ahead, Brian.
All right, let's put this is a little bit longer, but it's good because again, just watch how these people operate because this is all you get, And basically, what he's saying is, I know you are, but what am I? Type of childish answer, from the when you're in elementary school. But Mo Brooks does it now.
So you take the bike to work, huh?
Sometimes.
The man with the bicycle is Alabama Republican Congressman Mo Brooks. Congressman, is there any way we could get you to talk about January 6th?
I do not do interviews with CNN because I do not trust CNN to be honorable or truthful.
Yes, the same man who said this on January 6th.
Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
Since then, he's peddled the bogus conspiracy theory that Antifa was behind the insurrection at the Capitol. Can I ask you, do you still believe Antifa was behind January 6th?
I've already said what I'm going to say. I don't trust y'all to be truthful or honest.
Well, can you tell us if you regret what you said on January 6th?
I do not trust CNN to be truthful or honest, so I do no
Well, I'm
interviews
just asking you
CNN.
questions. I'm asking you fair questions here, sir. Why can't you answer the question?
I do not trust y'all to be truthful or honest with anything CNN does.
It's on video. If you can just talk to us for a moment. Then he
rode
rode off.
Lie through your teeth any chance you get.
Well, give you the chance to come on if you don't mind. Congresswoman? We also caught up with GOP Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who did stop to talk to us. For weeks, she's been spreading the false flag theory that the FBI was somehow involved in the riots. Despite all of that body cam footage showing Trump supporters and right-wing extremists storming the Capitol, not to mention hundreds of arrests of Trump rioters. But when we pressed her for evidence to back up her claims, she didn't offer any. You've seen the video that's come out so far. What do you think of that video? It seems to show a lot of Trump supporters involved in the rioting. I didn't see any Antifa or FBI.
Here's how I see it.
Yeah.
The American taxpayers pay for everything here, right? They pay for the building, they pay for the cameras, they pay for the staff, they pay my salary, they pay for everything. And this is the type of video that they deserve to see publicly. So
but I'm asking you about the video itself.
Just real quick, I want to add there. Notice she talks about the American taxpayers. I mean, there she's trying to get those people on her side. So she throws out those Republican memes. Like, this is paid for by the American taxpayer.
When you look at the video, don't you mainly see Trump supporters involved in the rioting?
There's all kinds of people involved in the rioting. There's people in black.
And there you go. That's exactly what Trump said. There's good and bad on each side.
There's people in red hats. There's people in Trump
There are
clothes.
Oath Keepers. There are people from the Proud Boys.
That's what we've read and seen, yes. And then
that they've been arrested. They've been arrested. They've been brought to court.
They're being held, some of them in solitary confinement, almost 24 hours a day in the jails here.
Too bad.
Right, but I'm wondering, so if they're being held in jail, if they're in solitary confinement, like you said, where does this stuff come from about the FBI and Antifa? Where are you getting that from, if I may be?
Well, this is the reports that have been
that.
coming out. There's, information that there may have been FBI operatives. Now, we don't know what that means, right? Is that informants? Is that where?
See, Dave, I'm going to just cut off for a second here. We'll go back.
Right.
It's starting to sound like, the pillow guy, these informants, and it's starting to sound like Rudy Giuliani. And
it hurts. It hurts my head.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is why. I mean, I don't even really have to continue, to be honest with you.
No.
The point is that this is the kind of thing that gets you upset because you know these people are lying through their teeth. Mo Brooks.
Well, let me try another tactic.
It's not a question of CNN lying. He knows that they're going to get to the truth of something.
Yeah. Well, there's only two things you can take away from Mr. Brooks and Ms. Greene, and they're both frightening. And I don't know which is more frightening. One is that they know the truth and they're lying. The other thing is that they believe they're telling the truth, even after seeing what we've all seen. And let's put it like this. Either one, I think, should bar them from continuing to serve America as one of its House of Representative members. That's how I feel. You're entitled to your opinion. Yes. Okay, that's fine. You're entitled to have a difference between conservatives and liberals. Yes, that's fine. But when you present alternate history as history that you believe did occur, or probably worse, you twist, turn. You pointed out, and if you hadn't, I was just getting ready to jump on it, Brian. They use the keywords taxpayers. Right. Now, most people don't want their taxes to go up. I really don't have a problem with my taxes. What I do have some problem with sometimes is what they're spent on, right?
Right.
I'm fine with it. I mean, I'd give more if they were spent on things that
I
think.
But Dave, it never goes to that point because it's always that catchphrase. Democrats are going to kill babies. Democrats are going to raise your tax. So you can't beat stupid. And this is what Bukowski was saying.
No, you can't beat stupid, but you don't have to elect it. Now, let's assume for a moment. Now, let's assume the really worst case scenario. I will bet you, if nothing else transpires, Ms. Greene, Taylor Greene, will be back, right?
Marcia's Brady. This is Marjorie, okay?
You're giving her too much credit.
You keep thinking about, Marcia Brady, I know is your favorite.
I call her Marcia for a reason.
Oh, yeah?
She's not going to be truthful. I'm not going to be truthful. I know her name is Marjorie. It's Marcia. Just if she ever hears it, maybe she'll get mad at it. Yeah, she is. Oh, Marcia. Now, here's the thing, as Joe Biden says.
Well, I think you call her the thing. She is.
Nah, that's true. In the first quarter, we're now in the second quarter of the year, she raised $3.2 million in small donations of people who thinks she is one of the saviors of America. Think about that. So she's got a base. Now, how do you stop someone like that? The only way I could think to do it, and I'm not even sure this would do it, if there is a former Georgia football player, right, who is very extremely popular and would be willing to be a Democrat and be certainly, it doesn't, anybody's going to be more liberal than she is, and declare residency and go up against her, right? I don't see, other than that, she will be returned to Congress. Mo Brooks, I do know something because, with my family in Australia now, but soon to return to Alabama.
Alabama, right?
Yeah, they'll go back to Alabama. They don't have any home there. They sold their home now. But I mean,
there is an Alabama, but doesn't.
Well, that's part of it. And right now, I have two grandchildren who don't want to return. They prefer to stay where they are. And interesting. This is an interesting thing about. I'm not talking about my granddaughter. I'm just talking about having a different perspective. Audrey has a chance now to look at Alabama and her friends there. And the other night, she said to her mother and father, she says, I don't want to go back. I don't know if I can go back. I now, I've seen what they're doing. Why? How do they do this? And Brian, a lot of times we're so close to the situation, or we don't want to offend, or whatever. And so Mr. Brooks also lives in a district that, short of Nick Saban, the Alabama football coach, right, or maybe I don't know, not even Broadway Joe could do it because he's, he was a god at Alabama a long time ago. And so the way these districts are gerrymandered, where they come from, they're going to return that. So, and we say, okay, let's go work in the House. Let's go work in districts where, we can win. And the last number I saw, and it changes periodically, but I saw, if you take everything away from it, there are 7 legislative districts in the House that you would say every time are up for possible grab. Everything else is leans or is in one camp or the other. So yeah, very, very difficult. Let me ask you a question. It's a tough one. Okay. But I like tough questions. Okay. You have unlimited power, right? And you can get rid of either Marsha, or you can get rid of no more Brooks. Which one do you get rid of?
I only have a choice of one.
Yeah, you can't. One will go, one will stay.
If I had to choose, I would choose Mo Brooks because he's been there longer and he's more
Entrenched.
Entrenched, right, in the system. I'd like to see him gone. I think she can be dealt with at some level.
And I'm going to take the opposite tactic, not just because we do that. I certainly understand your reasoning. And I'm going to say, given what I call the old politics, you're absolutely 100% correct in your assumption. Right now, I don't know that time served does any benefit. She, to me, right now, because of the amount of money she's raised, because of her notoriety.
Yeah, and it's the things around.
So I would probably get rid of her, and just because I think again right now there's a better chance of if you get rid of her, maybe a liberal Democrat, maybe a person of color could win in Georgia because it's going purple. Alabama is a ways away yet, right? They're red.
Again, but you're assuming that this is like the 2020 elections, that there's some sensibility, some
no. I'm just
fairness in the system. There's no fairness in the system anymore.
Oh no. I understand, Brian. But what I'm saying is, she has $3.2 million to play with.
It's not only that.
Who's going to beat her? Who's going to beat her? There's nobody can beat her. That's why I'm going to use it's like the way I look at it, Brian. It was it's a question that's meaningless because it's not going to happen. But I would look at that sort of as a lawyer has challenges, for the jury. And you have to pick out who you're going to strike. And sometimes you have to leave bad people in there, because you want to get the worst out. And it's a meaningless question, but I just thought it would just be interesting.
Right. I mean, it's hard to make a decision. Those kind of questions are like comparing scars. I get what you're saying. I mean, you could logically look at it from either side.
Right. How about this?
I'd like to see both of them go.
Well, there you are. I was just getting ready. We must have ESPN working because I was going to say that's the ideal. Well, I'm going to go out tonight and say I want to see every Republican senator and every Republican congressperson gone. And I was thinking about that today. I was coming back from D.C. I don't know why I was thinking about it. I guess because I was thinking about the show a little bit. And I'm thinking, okay, let's use Mitt Romney. I think Mitt Romney probably in general is probably a basically decent person. I really do get that impression. I thought he was a decent governor. But here's the thing. There's Joe Biden again. But here's the thing now. Let me try to, okay. If you were to get all the pygmies together, right?
Uh-oh. Real quick.
I see that. We're going to come back to you, Veg, in just a moment. We got to hear a little bit more about that because, we're a family here.
Yes.
But anyway, I was thinking about this in this way. If you were to go get all the pygmies, right, there'd be the tallest pygmy, but that tallest pygmy is still short. And the converse is true. If you were to get all the Zulus, right, together, the warriors, there's going to be the shortest Zulu, but they're all probably going to be tall. And I think that's what I'm looking at now with Liz Cheney, with Mitt Romney, compared to the others. But does that, no. And it's beyond that because Mitt Romney has voted, and people say, oh, he did this. Well, he's still a conservative. And so he certainly didn't vote against your favorite Supreme Court, most recent Supreme Court justice, did he? Even though I think that was horrendous. Again, I understand it's politics and Republicans play it dirty and win. But, when you can't, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she knew she wasn't going to get her way, but the lady's dying. And of course, they don't think she was a good justice. And she says, just wait until we get a new president. And of course, they weren't going to do that. So, yeah, that's.
So real quick, Veg.
What's going on there?
I don't know. I don't want to get into it. The first thing I thought was COVID and all that stuff. But
No.
Veg, because I know you're in Canada, but whatever it is, glad to see you back. And yeah, that's I'm smiling. I don't mean to be. That was more out of I don't even know. That was just a reaction.
But we forget, or I should forget. I shouldn't say we, Brian. We do this show, and we talk about this family and things. And sometimes I forget this, and I'm not glad that bad things have happened to Keith or bad things have happened to
we've had a lot of rough goes.
Yeah, but what it does do, life goes on outside of this kind of thing. And while it's very important, right? It's very, very important for history, for the future, for those. We have to remember that, and you said it earlier, some people, it may be work, it may be health, have to either can't get involved in the fray or have to step aside for a period of time. And I think it's very important that those of us who are there maybe have to, pick up the burden a little bit. One of the things that I've decided to do, I'm kind of kicking myself. I went to a Chinese restaurant here, our neighborhood Chinese restaurant. And there was just myself and my wife and one other person. We went really early, right? So nobody was in there. They were doing some takeout, but that was it. And Fox News was on. And I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. And I made a vow that any place I go from here on out, if Fox News is on, I'm going to ask them kindly to turn it off. And the same would hold true with Newsmax or AON. And if they refuse, I'm just going to say, look, you're entitled. Ooh.
That's what Ronnie's grandfather died from.
Aneurysms. Right. No, they're not anything to mess with.
But now they can handle it some ways.
Well, that's true. So thoughts, good thoughts, healing thoughts from all of us, Veg. So just face that. Sorry, I mean, I think now this is not going to change anybody. No, not necessarily. But I think sometimes we just, for ourselves, we have to continue to fight where we can. And that's something I can do. If I walk into an establishment, be it Washington or
that's why I don't go to the Green Olive anymore, because they had that OA on, and it was over a year ago.
And see, again, I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, that's one step, but I want to make certain, because of who I am, I want to make certain that I complain, not in an obnoxious way. Just say, look, this is not news. This is and they'll say, look, we have the right. And I'll say, you're absolutely right. You can show anything you want. See you. And if I've ordered food, I'll pay my bill and just walk out.
Well, Dave, I do want to wrap up what I was going to say, and then I want to ask you a question.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, because go ahead.
And again, this relates to how we started the show, or I said that have this philosophical negativity, and then I have this, I guess I said it was an empiricist type of thinking, just from my experience, what I'm experiencing. But what I'm seeing from these Republicans, and this is very hard to explain, but it's almost as if they're prisoners of their own. Talking about experiences, they are prisoners of their own experiences, because they seem to have their own facts that they base their own logic on, and and these facts are kind of like in a bubble, so they're kind of they're enclosed. And then they apply these facts. Now, one could argue that we all kind of do that, but I would argue that we don't. But they stay within that bubble or that playing field of their facts, and they keep applying that to the reality of how they think things are. That these people are lazy and these people are bad and they're stealing the election. It's that I think is a problem. Again, while they are prisoners, they are putting the pressure on the Brian Weinsteins of the world and the David Prices of the world, right, and the people in our audience, because you kind of know that, just like with Jim Acosta, he's getting nothing out of these people. The only thing he can say is, we're talking about Mo Brooks, is CNN's a liar. You're a liar. I know you are, but what am I? I know you. It's just, it really was that.
Maybe we should start calling all of them Pee Wee. Just remind Pee Wee Herman. It's that he did that.
And like I said, the dumb people.
Veg, we're going to come back to that in a moment too. Veg, yes, it is distressing. But
it goes to show you that, Dave, that these people
not surprising
are extremely dangerous. And as you say, they could take this whole thing. This is so serious. It's better that Trump didn't make it and Trump didn't get away.
No, well, never. I know. And we've had
But this is something where I think Biden is going to have to take bigger steps than he thought he'd have to take. And I don't know what you're going to do. I don't want you to do anything illegal But you're not going to do it with Chuck Schumer saying that he's pissed off, or to
No,
have some
well,
text that's going to say we're angry. That doesn't work. You got to.
no.
Why is it the Republicans always know what to say, how to say it, when to say it, and get away with all the shit they do?
Okay,
And look what happened on the 6th. That is complete bullshit.
I'm
What
gonna,
they
I'm gonna
did,
get,
and still people are getting away with that.
okay. I'm going to comment on that the way I comment now. Again, you know that I welcome people to challenge me because I'm never sure that I'm right. So, I mean, I'm just going to tell you what I do. So, basically, I'm going to interpret your question this way. Why do the Republicans get to do things that put them in power, even with their numbers down, and why do Democrats not? Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think this gets to the heart of it. It's not the only reason. I mean, we could talk about they're more despicable, they're more this. Okay, that's fine. But if you really want a fact that can't be disputed, the Republican Party today, yesterday, represented two groups, which often overlapped. They represented white males and they represented the wealthy, right? And I don't know that they represented the owner of Black entertainment television, white owners we're talking about. So if you only have one group that you really have to worry about, and something I'll never understand is how any woman can be a Republican. It's beyond
it's definitely the most unattractive type of thing that one can.
I mean, I just can't get it. But there are. So I would say the white Republican males and the women who somehow find it in their heart to love them. Pretty easy, right? I mean, you're only speaking to one group. The Democrats are divided among so many different groups, right? You have African Americans, you have Latinos, you have a large representative of LGBTQ people. You have
but they all believe
some
in
wealthy.
democracy, though, Dave. They all
What?
But they all believe.
Oh no, I understand that, but there's still, you've got to juggle some things, right? And the more you study history, you see how that.
Right. It's just that we did come together during the vote. I mean, I think.
And that's it. I mean, we're going like tonight, and understand. So, I'll let you know how I feel tonight, and I'm not putting it off. 2022 will show me something, and 2024 will show me something. But in the back of my mind, there'll always be the nagging concern that I honestly thought, and I really did believe that when America elected Barack Obama, and even more so when they reelected him, I thought, I don't want to say turned a corner, but I thought we were moving ahead.
Right.
And certainly in 2016, if we were playing the game of life, we moved back 14 spaces. We were sent back on the board of the game of life. So I have to keep that in mind too. Anything else, Brian? Because I think again,
I think I just wanted to vent a little bit. I've been doing that for the last 3 weeks. There are a lot of things that I could pull out of the news, but I'm kind of like a machine that registers, an anger level, and we all know everybody in Divided We Stand is divided, and we in terms of the Republicans versus
us and them,
right? But the question, how angry are we right now? And I think Anthony Davis, as you said, clearly showed a couple of days ago with his post. It was that frustration that I was feeling. I don't necessarily do it that way all the time, but that was a good post because it really shows. It was like a Bukowski thing. I'm fucking pissed, and that's
right.
And that's that. But what I wanted to ask you, you've been asking me what's bothering me. You seem to be the guy that nothing bothers you, but something has to bother. So do you have something that you can tell us that actually bothers you today?
Yeah, well, again, recently, and I like this approach, being a journalist, and certainly not feeling as Mr. Brooks does about Mr. Acosta, although I might want to do a show one day on what's wrong with journalism today. And as I've said before, and I will say it again, for me, it works. I do not watch television news. I will say, when Donald Trump was there, I too was drawn, just like you're drawn to an accident, to see what's going on. My wife, she does read. She reads the Washington Post every day, but she finds some comfort, I think, in what you would call that lineup of MSNBC from Ari to Joyce Reid to Chris Hayes,
yeah.
to Rachel
By the way,
Maddow.
Chris Hayes, I don't know what you're with Judy thinks, but
Oh,
of late, Chris Hayes has been like at the top of my list now, and I like Lawrence O'Donnell, I like Rachel, but Chris Hayes is tremendous.
I think again, the young kid on the block sometimes has to take a little different tactic. Rachel is outstanding at what she does. Lawrence O'Donnell is outstanding at what he did. Chris Matthews was very good until he fell apart some things, right? But it was there. But as I say, the other night, I guess last night, I don't know. I can't remember. I was working on some things and I happened to walk out and I was hungry. So I decided to get some yogurt. And so my wife has, again, this is, many of us have this. I'm a slob. And so she says, you can't eat.
No, you like that to do artwork on your shirt with your food.
I know. I mean, I am. I know that.
You're the only one that gets more food on a shirt than I do, okay?
But here's the thing. But what's interesting about that, Brian, I always have something to eat. I never run out of food.
Right, you never run out.
On my shirt. But no, so she has some.
She's always following you around with some type of handy wipe.
Oh no, she's still doing that. But the funny thing is, so it's agreeable. I'll eat in the kitchen. She say contain, this to one area, not the whole house.
May I ask you a personal question? Nobody's listening. Okay, I've got everybody on mute.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Do you wear a bib?
No, not even. Even
an old person's bib or a young person's bib?
No. In fact, I'm very anti-bib. And that came from the years of eating lobster dipped in butter sauce. And it was so good, or corn. No. I joke about it, but I mean, I just accept. I'm sloppy. I mean, what can I say?
I kind of noticed when you threw Judy that pancake from
that was something away. Different. That was a
wonderful move. That was I shouldn't even say
that was not being sloppy. That was just being. She said, Brian, I don't get that. For those of you who don't understand what we're talking about, one time Brian and I and Ronnie and
actually,
Judy,
can you let me say what happened? Because I think
you certainly may, Brian.
So
go ahead.
The firehouse from our local firehouse was trying to raise some money for whatever. They do it every once in a while. So they have this breakfast. They have, I don't know, eggs and toast and pancakes and things like that. So Dave comes up with some stuff, and I think he's going for seconds, and I might have done it myself. But Judy, his wife, wonderful person, says, Dave, can you get me some pancakes? So he has his tray, but he goes and he just takes his hand and he dips his hand in like meat hooks to the pancakes. Then he comes over. He doesn't put it on a plate for Judy. He takes it and he throws it like a frisbee on her plate, and he doesn't even look at it. And he starts eating again. And I'm looking at my wife. I'm like, well, look at this guy. He just throws it with his hands.
But let me say this: number one, did every pancake land on the plate?
It did land.
Now, so I was practicing ultimate frisbee. Now, the second thing is, did it land faster than if I'd walked it over to her?
Well, it wasn't even the landing.
No, answer the question. Did it?
You're literally taking your meat hooks and your hands are all over it.
Well, again,
you went into the pile. First of all, in the line, and then if that wasn't bad enough, then you're just throwing it on her plate, and she's like looking at it, and look, I'm not expecting you, to be one of these guys that has to sip their tea with the pinky coming out the side, but it's just that it felt to me like you're just trying to get this thing over, so I'll just throw her
as I said, I was practicing ultimate frisbee, and I was pretty good at it at that time.
You did.
And now
I'll give you credit. You did give her.
Now I'm out of practice.
Okay, you did give her the pancake.
I have to wait a minute. I thought I turned the phone off in here. I just want to make sure it's not.
Is that Marjorie Taylor Greene calling you?
No. Okay, so back to this TV. Walking in, I learned I can't even watch it for a minute. I got so angry that I delivered the single finger digit twice and then turned and mooned the television. And then I walked out. I said, no more. So I can't even watch it there. So I do read. I think, and I can control my anger better that way. I think it's more in depth. So I want to talk tonight about three things I was following this week. Two are related. The first one is something that I am concerned very much about, and I have mixed feelings about it. So I'd really be interested, again, we don't work in a vacuum here. So anybody who's listening, if you could share some thoughts on this first story when I get it done, let me know what you're
Ryan, we have a
thinking.
question. Mandy wants to know: did Judy eat those pancakes?
Oh, Mandy, yes, absolutely.
I don't know. Mandy, I
She
don't know.
did. Now listen, Brian, that's the least you should hear now. I like yogurt, and she asked me the other day very nicely, and she's probably the nicest person that I know. Not just for putting up with.
I'll say this: Judy would not have done that to you. She would have given you a plate with the pancake. Yeah. That would have. Yeah, well, that's true.
I know, but
Dave, you would have made a good Neanderthal. Let me tell you, you really would have.
Well, I like that. Now, her new cause, and I should be better at it, is I eat yogurt a lot now. I like yogurt, and all she said to me was this: once can you get yogurt not all over the refrigerator? And I said, I don't know how I do that, right? She said, oh, I know how you do that. And we play a game now. Like if she comes to bed early and I get a late snack, the next morning she'll go out and she can tell what I ate because of the crumbs that are on the floor. I'm sloppy. What can I say? Let's get back to some news here, Brian. Enough about me.
Yeah, we were joking.
Okay,
a lot
so here's
wow.
Oh no, here's the story that I'm concerned about. It's a liberal, and I'm concerned very much about a decision Steven Breyer, Supreme Court Justice, may or may not make. Okay, so some background on Mr. Breyer. He is extremely liberal, right? He's a senior liberal on the court, but he's 82 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen mounting pressure that he should resign. The reason being that we know that Mitch McConnell, if he were to get the power back in 2022, will not move any nomination that Joe Biden makes. And then if the Republicans can get the presidency in 2024, then we're going to have, we're going to have maybe, and Mr. Breyer then retires, there'll be, instead of a 6-3 court, it'll be a 7-2 court. Now, Supreme Court justices, by law, serve for life, Brian, as you well know. But in the 1780s, when we became a country, serving for life, the average age of a male was 34. Now, that does not mean that people didn't live into their 70s and 80s, barely in their 90s, but they did. So an appointment for life, it probably wasn't going to be that long. Certainly not the way it is now. Now, it's some liberal groups in Washington are really pushing for Mr. Breyer to step down. Some groups got together and got some money this week, and they hired a truck with a message riding around and around the Supreme Court, just around the block. Breyer retire. Okay. He spoke this week at Harvard to potential law students here. And he pretty much gave the indication, although he didn't say anything directly, that he's not going to retire. And I'll get to that again in a moment. And now there was a Representative Jones from New York, was the first person to come out and say, yes, Steve. He doesn't call him Steve, but yes, Judge Breyer, you need to retire. And now Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, has joined that. And their concern is the fact that we can't mess with this, right? We can't wait. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I had a little different feeling about her. She will go down as not just one of the best justices in history, but one of the best female attorneys. I mean, she's an amazing woman. And I really believe that in her heart, and she indicated, she was going to hold on despite everything because she wanted Hillary Clinton, who in her mind was going to be the first female president, to be the one to name her replacement, right? Well, it didn't quite work out that way. That in life, I would have bet Hillary would have beaten Trump. I would have bet even on election night, and she didn't. So I'm concerned about Breyer now, following in those footsteps. So, and here's an interesting numbers. Numbers don't lie, right? Okay, so in 1994, Bill Clinton nominates Steve Breyer to the court. And he was confirmed. Now, remember, Clinton is when this kind of started breaking down, right? I mean, it's always broken down, but now he was confirmed by an 87-9 vote in the Senate. An extreme liberal, known to be a liberal. Well, there were a lot of Republicans voted for him, right? Because that was the way it was done. Pretty much, Robert Bork was the first one that really ran afoul. He was a conservative, but pretty much you kind of knew that, okay, we'll take this woman or this man and we'll get ours the next time. And, it'll kind of work out in the long run. That was prior to Mitch McConnell and the way Republicans play hardball now. Now, with Amy Corey Barrett, who's under some flack for her church now, that she was so supportive of in the church school, a lot of Me Too stuff circulating there, but I don't know if she's involved with that. However, her vote was 52-48 along strict party lines. That's how much we've changed, right? And Breyer's still holding on. So he has said, I'm not unaware of politics, but I worry that stepping aside will create the wrong view of the court. And here's what he goes on to say, and this is a quote. Let me pull up this so I can get it accurate. If the public sees the judges as political persons in robes, its confidence in the courts and the rule of law itself can only be diminished. Now, I understand Mr. Breyer's concern, but I think that ship has sailed. I think they are. I think they've always been. Now, there are examples, Brian, if you go back in history. Earl Warren, right, was appointed by Dwight Eisenhower as a relatively conservative, in that time, Republican. And the Warren court has gone down as the most liberal in history.
Right.
And people ask what happened. We're seeing it already on this court. There's been a couple of votes that have really surprised me, right? The most recent, pretty much saying, okay, stop this. The affirmative Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act is here to stay. And that surprised me a little bit. But we haven't seen the one coming up on abortion. I really did like their ruling a lot. They did on the young lady who, I don't know if you followed that. I followed the case from the beginning. About the young lady who didn't make the varsity cheerleader squad. Right. She was 15. She went and said, fuck you, and right. Said, but it was off school grounds, off school time, and they suspended her for a year from practice. She did get back on the team the next year, but I'm sure it wasn't the same. And the court upheld that the school the court ruled that the school was wrong in punishing her for what was said, right? So here's the thing. Now, you're saying what bothers me? Here's the thing. Breyer just hired 4 law clerks for the next term. You don't hire 4 law clerks if you're not intending to come back. You wouldn't do that to young people, right? So while he hasn't made any announcement yet, unless maybe Joe Biden or someone can get to him and say, look, you've done great for the country. We can't afford this, and somehow change his mind. And the Las Vegas odds makers, who will make odds on everything, the odds are now 70-30 against his retiring.
Well, even if he did, though, Dave, do you think they could actually get him through?
Yeah, they can, because it's a 51-50 vote. Would get
I understand that, but how do you know that Manchin or Sinema would do it?
I don't. But I do think, we don't know what game they're playing, or we don't know that. No. And
Can you imagine the people of West Virginia?
Okay. Well, look. I mean, if that happens,
I'm just trying to be a realist.
No. If that happens, then you go to war. I mean, you go to war with 2 people in your own party. There are people who say we should now. That would just, if they couldn't do that, then wow. I mean, you primary the hell out of Manchin. You primary the hell out of
then we do go the Bernie route, and we just gotta.
Yeah. So that's one thing, but that's not the big one. I have 2 related stories here. One is national, and one is in my own backyard, and they're both about the same thing. So I was mentioned earlier, Brian, that I've been doing a lot of research for this tour. Shameless self-promotion here. We're not going to take it. 100 years of dissent, protests, marches, and rallies in the nation's capital. And I'm really fascinated by this period because it was so bad, Brian, that we didn't even have any protest against it. and that was actually, people massing to go. They were so afraid. And that was the Red Scare and Joe McCarthy. It was fought privately, behind the scenes, to some effect. A couple senators spoke out early, but from 50 to 54, pretty much until Edward R. Murrow, true giant of journalism, he didn't stop. But he had a show that was like 60 minutes then, and he just used McCarthy's own words against him. And then McCarthy crossed the line and got Eisenhower's ire up when he attacked the army. McCarthy was very much like a Trump in the fact that, nothing was going to satisfy him. And that was going to happen. So I ran across this article. Your favorite governor from Florida, Mr. Ron DeSantis. Now, I object to this on so many levels, but primarily as an American, as someone who believes in the sanctity of decisions, personal conscience, and that kind of thing, and then as an educator. So I'm really following this very closely, but I'm going to talk about this tonight. I'll probably talk about this until it ends, which may not happen in my lifetime. And what I'm talking about, of course, is CRT, critical race theory, right? Well, let's look at that. You talk about a boogeyman. DeSantis has bought that hook, line, and sinker. And Brian, it's very much like the Red Menace, the Red Scare. And for anybody out there who's not familiar with that, here's what it meant. If you were accused of being a communist, you were a communist.
Now, even the teachers in the 50s had to take oaths.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And if you didn't, you were fired. If you took the fifth, you were fired.
I know that happened in Delaware Township High School, which was in essentially Cherry Hill West and Cherry Hill.
Right.
Before, and then I'm sure if it happened in there, it certainly happened in Bridgeton.
Well, actually, in this, it did. But actually, this article talked about it happened to a teacher in Florida, and now this whole article was are we back in 1954?
By the way, I do want to mention this for Joey out there, Cherry Hill West. My friends from the past, Joe Chilbert, he was one of the ones who, because the people were afraid of Joe. Joe was a tough guy. Joe didn't sign that. He did not take the oath. He was one teacher who didn't do it even back then.
Well, Brian, not
everybody can do that, but most people were willing to take that oath back then.
But what happens is it's been a long time. I was only what would I have been 2 in 1954. So I had to go back and look at it, and it scared me, and it's really frightening. So DeSantis, who right now, and earlier somebody, I forget, one of our people said, "My God, it bothers him that Trump's back out," and I think it's in Ohio is where he's speaking.
Right. He is in Ohio.
Well, there's no question.
And he's attacking somebody. I forget who it is.
He attacks somebody every time. But what's interesting is DeSantis was his lapdog, right, and did everything he wanted.
Absolutely.
But now DeSantis is
he's smelling himself, isn't he? He's smelling himself. Right,
so now what happens? It gets interesting, right? And Trump does not want anyone over him. In fact, here's an interesting story, not confirmed yet. Keep an eye on this one. That he's had a falling out with his daughter Ivanka and Jared. And it's kind of a double falling out. The first thing, he's a little miffed because they've kind of distanced themselves. When's the last time you've seen them together?
I don't.
The last time I can remember is when the family flew down to Florida, right? So I think, he's even more miffed now that they have made more money than he has during their years. That's Trump. So how he's going to treat Mr. DeSantis will be interesting. But here's some of the facts of this new law. Now, Brian, you're a teacher, so I want you to react as a teacher. All right? This is all Governor DeSantis signed this law and got it passed and signed it in. First of all, number one, public school curricula will now teach, quote, the evils of communism. Okay. But that's only part of it. Schools are prohibited from teaching certain topics on race, including that racism is embedded in American society and its legal systems.
Which I'm going to be putting these all up in my Russian class.
No, we got that.
Maybe I'll be in trouble. Maybe just
no. Well, you might no. But the idea, and here's the most frightening, maybe of all. There's one provision in this new law that applies to higher education. Now, look, we're both graduates of college. We've taken masters. I don't have a master's, but I've taken master's classes. I've lectured. And there's a big difference between elementary school, junior high school, college, master's, graduate school, and PhD, graduate school. But college is where you're supposed to hear all the things and decide for yourself.
Right.
What's right and what's wrong.
Different. Well, unless you have a really good teacher in high school.
Well, and even then, you're not really. I mean, I wasn't.
And there are some nuts in colleges.
No, but I mean, I wasn't prepared in high school to understand. By college time, I started, get some more reading in and some more knowledge in and some more age in, and was able to understand some of the things. But the higher education law, which the Republicans say is ideologically neutral, which is bullshit. It says, and I quote, "It allows for budget cuts to colleges based on student and faculty surveys about viewpoint diversity." Now, what does that mean in terms of Florida's law? It means if they find out there's too many liberal professors or too many liberal students, they can cut the budgets. And if you cut the budgets of college, what happens? You eventually close their doors. So we are back in Florida and other places. We're back in what I would say is every bit as dangerous as the Red Scare. Now, I want everybody out here, evil Yoda, there is, but I would like something, and just a yes or a no would suffice for anybody who would be kind enough to do this. And Brian, you're going to be first, okay? When I say the term the lavender scare, do you know what that is?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So would everybody answer that? If you just don't, just a few of you just put up no. It's not an insult to your intelligence. I knew nothing about it until about a month ago. And I'll answer what it is after I see a few people. If I get 4 people who put up a yes or no, I'll tell you. If not, you're all on your own to learn about it. Now, guess who's promoting this, Brian? Your favorite news station, Fox.
It sounds like some type of perfume.
No, not the lavender scare. I'm talking about the
Chanel,
the law.
No, I shouldn't joke. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's what we do. Your favorite news station, Fox News. It's on Fucker Carlson's mind just about every other sentence, right? And the other is, and listen to what I'm going to describe as, a set of, and here's the key phrase, brand new conservative think tanks. What do they mean by brand new? Created from 2016 to today, right? What does that mean? It means these are the think tanks that are now in the pocket of Donald Trump. Now, there was a think tank that he raided for his, and if you think tanks are wonderful to visit down here for 2 reasons. I didn't know you could do this, but I learned as soon as I came in 2011. You can go and listen to some of the greatest speakers in America. Veg is a no. Kind of keep track for me there. That's one. We need 4 more, or 3 more. I'm sorry.
Well, we don't see any yeses, so.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, it's not. I'm not insulting. I mean, like I said, I didn't know anything about it.
I have no problem
a month
saying
ago.
no. If I don't know it, I don't know it.
Yeah, well, right.
I mean, I think I've heard. I think you told me.
Well, no, I hadn't even heard of it. So this was brand new to me that I found in my research of doing the Red Scare, the lavender scare. So the think tank down here that was the most right wing was one called Heritage. And it was the one that
Foundation?
Heritage Foundation, correct. And I visited that more than any place else. Even though they had the worst food, they really did. The best food, if you have a foodie, no, the best food was at AEI, which is the rich Republicans one. That would be Cheney and Rumsfeld and the Bushes, Steve Forbes. And then the other conservative one was Libertarians, and that was Cato. But with the Heritage Foundation, and one of my great moments, my wife she would go with me and she'd hit me, but it was fine. It was worth it. Nazi Gorka, do you know what I mean? I mean, I was very not
Bulgarian.
I was very proud. No, he's one of those
Serbian, I think, or something. I think he's Serbian.
No, you are right. He is Serbian, and he was there. He was part of Heritage, and I will say this: very, very smart person. Okay, but again, had ideas and ideologies that I didn't agree with, and we got into a toe-to-toe standing, and that was pretty cool. I liked that. I couldn't say that I won. I couldn't say that he won. And the reason I like to go to Heritage so much is, I mean, I was the only person that wasn't right wing who ever attended that. I never saw anyone else there. And I enjoyed going there. Maybe I have a Daniel in the Lion's Den complex. I don't know. But it was kind of fun. Well, my problem is with these new think tanks, they're to the right of Heritage. Oh, my God. I can't even figure out what that's going to be like. So Mr. DeSantis is now, we know, is going to, between now and 2024, do everything he can to put himself in shape to be the presidential nominee if Donald Trump is somehow precluded. And I'm not so sure that Mr. DeSantis might not even take on Mr. Trump. We don't know that.
Because if he sees that he's got it, look, the guy's got an ego, and he certainly may see that he's got an opportunity, and it might be his only opportunity, so he might take it. And maybe he'll do in Trump if he can. He'll have to look the way the polls are.
And Trump, and it'd be interesting to watch what Trump does. But here's this quote is from this story, and I think it kind of sums up my thinking on it. Hiding facts never changes them. Okay? Hiding facts never changes them. And that's basically what the Republicans are trying to do with these laws. Secondly, here is why Mr. DeSantis says we should be teaching about the evils of communism. Direct quote. Why would somebody flee across the shark-infested waters, say leaving from Cuba to come to southern Florida? Why would somebody leave a place like Vietnam? Why would people leave these countries and risk their lives to be able to come here? It's important that students understand that. Has nothing to do. No, let me rephrase it. Has very limited to do. It has to do with what you just said, Brian. It's economics. Okay. Capitalism is more lucrative, even to the poor, than communism is. But of course, he's going to use this now.
And some were prisoners.
There's a million reasons. But here's the problem. All this is going to be another boogeyman. The Republicans were talking about how good and how well they use them.
And they are effective at it. I mean, quite frankly, they are.
The last time we saw this, we saw it and they were very effective in destroying lives in the Red Scare. And I think we're one no away, or you keep track, maybe I'll do it anyway, from telling you about the Lavender Scare, which ran at the same time and is disconcerting, and maybe even more so than the Red Scare, was during the Civil Rights Movement. When civil rights was dismissed as a communist plot. And now we've got, and all the Vietnam anti-war movement, which is where I got my start, in the street, dismissed as a communist plot. Here's what we got. One Florida lawmaker, again, I'm going to quote him. He calls colleges today socialism factories. And the governor himself accuses schools of indoctrinating students. Now, why is this disturbing? For a number of reasons.
Well, I'll tell you that right now, where I went to school, it was a conservative school, generally conservative.
Right.
It was
look. Basically, this is the essence of truth in this. Critical race theory is a theory that is taught or is explored in colleges. People have taken. There's not a high school in the country using it, but Fox says they are, and so Fox people believe him. And Governor DeSantis says high school. It isn't. Basically, and you can find all kinds of theories in literature. A huge theory is the queer theory of literature. A lot of high level, and it's just a way to approach it and look, right. So what we have, I'm concerned tonight, Brian, we're going to have something just exactly like the Red Scare and McCarthy. But McCarthy was one junior senator from Wisconsin, and he had the power to bring the nation to a halt for 4 years. If you've got governors, Texas is putting it in, Georgia's putting it in,
Right.
Florida's putting it in. Every Republican state will get this in. And it is completely false because, first of all, it is false because it's not being taught. But even if it were, it would be true. And here's what's going to happen, Brian. You're not going to be able to teach Black history if these laws stand, right? How do you teach Black, and that's basically, if you look now.
Well, it's certainly not going to happen in certain states.
Again, I'm not a history man. I think I've told you and I've told others. If I had it to do over, but if I couldn't have been an English major, I would want to be a history major, right? I mean, it was my second love. And 3 historians. I mean, there's many great historians writing today. Michael Basclaus, who else? Steve Ambrose. But I have 3 that are my favorite. One is Douglas Brinkley, who I just think is brilliant. But 2 are very left. One is a personal friend that I met here. Actually, at the think tanks when we went together, James Lowen, and he's written a series of books you might be familiar with. Basically, all of this, everything my history teacher told me was a lie, and he's really critical of the way we teach history and what we did. And of course, if I had to pick the one historian that I agree most with, it would be Howard Zinn, who was really the first leftist historian. The people labeled it. No, he talked about how we treated poor people, how we treated race, how we treated the Native Americans. And the problem is, think about this, Brian. If you don't teach that, think about how much hatred could be directed toward Black Americans because you'd have no basis to understand why from time to time they may act out. Right. You have now. I mean, let's just look at Black. Let's just look at Black history very quickly. Let's take a quick run through American Black history. Slavery to the Klan and lynchings, right? To Jim Crow, to systemic racism and inequality. There's a Black experience. That's simple. On top of that, you have white supremacy. And I hope you're right, Trev. And I think it will be challenged. But again,
already you have the Department of Justice doing something.
They're looking into them, but again, we have no guarantees, right? I mean, so it's just something. Now, here's where it really hits home, Brian, and this really strikes me, and this concerns me because this tactic is very simple. It's like Marsha Green, Taylor Greene's tactic. That she appealed to the taxpayers, right? Very good appeal. Well, this and it's a determined tactic to again split Black and white in different groups, but it's also an issue that might play in the suburbs, right? And that's where the battle's going to be won. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not right on everything. Sometimes I'm not right on much, but I know this: cities are Democratic, rural areas are Republican, and so the deciding factor nationwide is going to be your suburbs. That's the only battleground left. Okay, so if they can get inroads here now. Brian, you don't probably know much about this. I do. Arlington County, where we live, is extremely wealthy, but it is poor country compared to our neighbor, Loudoun County. Loudoun County is, man, it's up there. Fairfax, maybe. We have 4 or 5 of the richest counties in America located here on the Virginia side. Now, Loudoun is interesting. It was once very rural, right? But what happened was it was the last area with undeveloped land out there. So a lot of people went out there and built mansions. This week, Tuesday night, they had a board meeting. Now, you've been to board meetings, right, Brian?
Couple.
Yeah, and I covered them all the time, both as a reporter and as an advocate in the school system. And most of them are very routine unless there's an issue. Now, first of all, I've been to board meetings where I was the only person there, right? I've been to more of those probably than any crowd. Well, you get a big issue. Well, the other night, they don't really have a crowd count yet. They think it could have been as many as 300 parents show up. And guess what they show up to do for the most part? To attack the Board of Education for teaching that Blacks are better than whites. This is suburbs. This is money. Now, the board, it became so heated that the 9 board members walked out of the room, and the sheriff's officers had to dispel the crowd with arrests. Wow. Wow, that's a board meeting, right? All over this issue, same issue as in Florida. Now, here's what the school system has done. They have offered training, since the majority of their teachers are white, offered training in how to understand those of other ethnicities and culture. Sort of, we're looking at that same issue that my new military hero, Judge Smiley there, said that, you should know that. You should read Marx. You should read Lenin for communism. Doesn't make you a communist. And you should read all this stuff. So here's what happens in Loudoun. The teachers are saying, I don't think we can teach Black history. Remember I said that before? They said, how do you do that? We don't want to be accused. If this is like the Red Scare, we can be fired. Now, it takes a brave teacher to stand up and say, I'm going to teach what I want because that's the right thing to do. That's very hard. You have a hard time staying awake, and teachers have a hard time envisioning themselves not having a job, right? And a job that they think they like. So, we got to keep an eye on this. And I'm just going to close with this quote that a teacher's leader said of teachers, and I think this gets right on the money, of history teachers. It's our job to present the factual parts of history, which are messy and dark, and allow the students to come to their own conclusions and think critically. I'm going to go back to one of my stories, Brian. I'm going to praise someone who's not on the planet anymore for actually changing my life over a period of a year as a teacher, but with one assignment in particular. You know him. His name's George McLaughlin. You and I probably know people.
I just had lunch with
know him.
him.
He was my.
I can remember him saying, "Fight in progress."
And,
that's what I'd say. He
called
fight in progress.
To describe George to those who don't know him, I thought he was really old. Come to find out, he was 5 years older than me, but he was always old for his age, because he was getting bald back then, and I thought he was, oh God. And we had him for history, and he delivered a series of lectures on the robber barons. Right? He praised them to the hilt. We're all sitting there scribbling down our notes, right? But he gave us all these readings that we were supposed to read, primary sources and stuff, that said they were sons of bitches. All of us parroted back his words. He failed every one of us. He said, never, ever, ever let somebody influence you without going to other sources, particularly primary sources. And that really changed my life, that one lesson. I was headed that way, I think, and I might have, but he helped me get on that road a lot faster. So I think a teacher like George McLaughlin would not be able maybe to teach in this country. Now, if we go to this, now it'll be a fight. I forget, one of our friends up there put up, it will not stand in court. I think he's right. I hope he's right. But again, it's a long fight. They'll certainly find a judge that'll say it is legal in Florida, and then they'll have to take it to the appellate court, and then it'll have to work its way up to the Supreme Court. And in the period, what happens to teachers and teaching in a lost generation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, just real quickly, because I've spoken a lot, but I want to close with the lavender scare. This is something I've learned. Now, my belief, and I would argue this with anybody who doesn't feel this, while John Kennedy, or let's start with Dwight Eisenhower. The president of the United States normally is the most powerful person in the United States. You could say that at any given time. So we have Dwight Eisenhower. Actually, we had Harry Truman, followed by Dwight Eisenhower, followed by John Kennedy, followed by Lyndon Baines Johnson, followed by Richard Nixon. But one man was there the whole time, and he is the most powerful man in America in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And that man has a building named for him in Washington, D.C., and that's J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover had the goods on everyone. And he was a true SOB. He makes Mitch McConnell look like an angel of charity when it came to power. Now, we're not going to get into the great debate, was he gay or not, et cetera, et cetera. I will say this. He spent all of his time with one man who was his assistant. It was very rare for men to do that at this point. He never married. So the reports, but I'm not, that's not what we're going to talk about. We just talk about the power that he had. Well, he believed that at the root of everything wrong with the world were the communists, right? So during McCarthy, he worked with Joe privately because J. Edgar never got involved, right, in things. If you do research on him, Brian, he broke every single law. Every single law. That part, yes, he did like to wear dresses. That's been verified. And that kind of may explain what I'm going to say about him next. But I mean, really, seriously, if you read it, it's like you think you get angry now. I get angry reading about him. And I've been doing research on him now for about 2 months. Real quick aside, just between you and I, Brian, so you don't fall asleep. In his 40 years as director of the FBI, he had the same secretary, right? The same female secretary. And her name was Helen Gandy. Guess where she went to high school, Brian?
That I did know.
And where was it?
Bridgeton High School.
Where I went to high school and taught, and where you currently teach now.
I do remember that story, yes.
Can you, and it's not, that's true. Now, interestingly, this is why you can't believe movies. If you go and look at the movie J. Edgar, it stars Leonardo DiCaprio as a young thing. And I can't remember. It was one of the really hot actresses at that point, plays Helen Gandy. And no offense, and at the risk of sounding sexist, you've heard the saying, had a face that could stop a clock. Well, Miss Gandy could have stopped Big Ben. I mean, she was not an attractive woman.
Was she liberal?
No. What she devoted her life to were two things. Never married. She devoted her life to two things. One was the FBI, and the other was propping up J. Edgar Hoover. He was, they played in the movie as a love interest. It was not a love interest. She loved her job. He loved his job. And I got to talk to a couple people over the years down here who said they weren't afraid of Hoover. I mean, Hoover was a bitch. But you didn't even get to see Hoover if Gandy didn't like you. If Gandy didn't like you, her stamp, Hoover would just say, they're done. You'd be farmed out to, Alaska or wherever. So you got this Hoover going on. So he's really worried about these communists, right? Because he said they're everywhere. He was feeding stuff to McCarthy. McCarthy, in turn is feeding stuff to J. Edgar. J. Edgar's behind the scenes. But J. Edgar is able to convince, because he has documentation on every president, we got to watch these commies. And you know what they do, Brian? Here's what they do. They find homosexual men or lesbian women. They threaten to expose them. And remember, we're talking about the 40s, 50s.
Right, different time period.
And they then become communist agents through the blackmail. More than 1,000 in the Lavender Scare running the same time as the Red Menace, that are joined like this. More than 1,000 government employees in Washington, D.C. were dismissed, fired for being gay. Same as it was the communists. All you had to say is he's gay. So I don't like you today, Brian. You're gay. You're gone. Now, look at what we were talking about tonight with these laws, and we can see that same thing coming back. And I think it may be in certain ways worse. It was bad then. You had the blacklist, where they went after the entertainment business and blacklisted a lot. Now, I think, again, two very brave actors, both of whom I happen to like, Paul Newman and Kirk Douglas, right? They were instrumental in fighting that.
Yeah, they were liberals.
And there was a great writer, screenwriter, maybe the best we ever knew, Dalton Trumbo. He was one of the 10 that were blacklisted. And Paul Newman got cast in Exodus, and Kirk Douglas got cast in Spartacus, two of my favorite movies of the 60s. And they said, okay, Dalton wrote both those movies because he was writing under assumed names and privately and, having other guys send it in. They said, if you don't put Dalton's name on as a screenwriter, we're pulling out. well, I'd already invested in the movie. So they were instrumental. And I mean, the names just go on and on and on. There were over, I think there were 400 people accused in Hollywood. And here's the irony. I'll end with the irony. Donald Trump claims witch hunt. How many times? How many times has he claimed, it's a witch hunt to get him? And
More than one can remember, that's for sure.
Here, his sycophants, his followers, the Trumpublicans, are now prepared to engage with the help of Fox News, who will play the opposite role that journalists did. Two journalists very instrumental in stopping McCarthy. They didn't work alone. One was Edward R. Murrow. The other was Drew Pearson. Both of which were the giant of their time. Edward R. Murrow was Walter Cronkite's mentor, probably, maybe even more venerated than Cronkite, and they both deserved it. Pearson was a muckraker. His assistant was Jack Anderson, who was a muckraker. And so we had journalism on our side. Now you got Fox, OAN, and Newsmax.
Right.
Man, I don't know, Bri. I don't know. So you're saying, what worries you? Yeah, these are things. Now, when we started and we say and we joke, I'm the optimist, you're the pessimist. I don't know how you remain optimistic other than to this, where you do hope, and that's a hope that the courts come through on this, because Fox News, Newsmax, and OAN are only going to get worse.
Right.
The Republican Party is only going to get worse.
Right.
If the Republican Party gets control, they're going to get control of the courts. That's only going to get worse. And you know what it leaves me with? And this is a comment I never thought as a child of the 60s I would ever make. If you asked me tonight, would I prefer to have the Republican Party in charge of America or a military coup? I'm going to go with the military coup. Mm-hmm. The military is smarter, better disciplined. Now, it's not your grandfather's army. It's not even the army. What people don't realize, and living one metro or two metro stops from the Pentagon, where I've met everyone from privates to generals. Not all of them, of course, because the Pentagon is the largest office building in the world. But I've met a lot, and they are educated. Now, not to say there aren't Trumpites in there too. I mean, I understand that, but I'm talking about those who rise up. Of course, you've got Flynn and a couple other oddities. But if you look at Judge Milley, you look at the number of people, they're speaking out now. I mean, Milley, I posted on Divided We Stand. This isn't any moment. He said, just shut the fuck up to Stephen Miller. We're finding out now, and we're seeing now just how dangerous it was with Trump there. We're seeing that every day he was proposing something, and Milley was stopping him, and a couple others. So, if you're going to ask me, I know you're not a science fiction fan. I am, but for the great line from Star Wars where Princess Leia is trying to communicate, and she says, "Please help us, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're our only hope." Right now, it's not going to be political. It's going to be the courts and the military. They're going to keep us alive until we can get the political system back. And I think if you're going to look at who acted whom and how, both acted somewhat admirably. But right now, I have more confidence in the military than I do the courts. So that's what I'm worried about, bud.
Well, Dave, it's been a nice show. I think that. One other thing. I just want to interrupt you. I just got a message from Gary Peacock, and he says he's being blocked again. Have you seen him tonight on the? I have no idea what Gary's even talking about. I can literally show you.
Yeah, I know.
Screen. I have every single person's name that comes through the comments. Gary, if you're listening, I don't block anything of yours. Okay, so unless he's commenting on Facebook, and there's no feed in Facebook anymore. We're doing this straight on YouTube. You got to go on YouTube to do this.
You know what? I talked to him the other night, and I forgot that, Brian. You're right. So Gary,
if you're doing it on Facebook, Gary, you're in the wrong field. I stopped Restream. So I'm going straight through YouTube, and then I'm sharing it to Facebook. You have to go on Facebook to make the comments.
You know what? I think you've just answered what happened.
I don't.
No, Brian. I'm serious. I think that's exactly what happened, and I'll talk to Gary because I knew you wouldn't block anyone.
I don't, unless somebody says something that's bigoted or just completely off the wall, I do not block anything.
No, and again, I think that's you and I have talked at length about how we run this, and we said basically, it is a private. There's no free speech involved here, because people really don't understand that that's free speech is the government can't restrict. We can restrict, but the question becomes, basically,
we're a team here.
Well,
this is why
basically, it's this. To be part of this family, I think you have to be liberal. I don't know why you would be there if you're not. Now, there's a whole line of liberal thought, right? We kind of said during the election that we weren't going to accept and tolerate any shall we say, attacks on Joe Biden as the candidate.
You're trying to win an election here,
and now I think there are fair criticisms of him. I'm making some. So I think, that you can certainly allow that. I think, and certainly I would say that,
as long as you don't give quarter to the.
Well, no, I mean, no. Well, we said. I mean, I've said it. I'll say it to anybody. We are better off as Americans with Joe Biden in office rather than Donald Trump. We have a human versus whatever the hell Trump is, and it's not human. Having said that, the honeymoon period is over for Mr. Biden. It is now time for him to produce.
Yeah, people forget that last election before 2020, you and I both supported Bernie Sanders.
Well, and again, not going to be a horse that's gone. This election, up until Mr. Biden was chosen as a nominee, I supported Elizabeth Warren, just because I thought that at that point, maybe it was the fact that I'd heard her speak a couple. I wasn't anti-Bernie Sanders. I would have been fine with that. I just, again, think that in retrospect, it doesn't matter what I think about Bernie or Senator Sanders or Senator Warren. Former Vice President Joe Biden was the nominee, and he did defeat Donald Trump, and that's fact. Okay, and that's fact. And we had to do that. That was the first step. Now, what we're finding out, Brian, is that it really. I call Trump now the catalyst, not the creator. He didn't create this mess. He's the catalyst. Just like I look at COVID. COVID is bringing some changes that would have been brought, like working from home and some of these other things. Right. It just put it like on steroids. And we're seeing that now with Trump just put some things, he gave permission. He gave permission to be a horrible person. He gave permission. Think about it. I just think, and then I say, fuck them. But think about you're a Ku Klux Klanman and all your life kind of hidden out. And all of a sudden the president of the United States says, you're a pretty good guy. Wow. No, Mr. Trump. So, yeah.
Well, he said he loved the stupid, so he.
Yeah, well, you live with it. And again, not, to put put an exclamation point. If some of these things that are being presented now, especially in critical race theory and the one about, intimidation and look, you think we have stupid now? Right? You think we have stupid now? Just wait. And look, let's be honest. Okay. The Republicans want stupid. Okay, they want stupid because I'm sorry, you cannot be an intelligent person and be part of the Republican Party. You can be an intelligent person and use the Republican Party, right? But you can't be one. You can't. Certainly Josh Hawley is not stupid. Certainly Ted Cruz is not stupid, and they're using the party. I'm not going to say one way or the other. I think Trump is ignorant when it comes to knowledge. I think Trump doesn't want to know knowledge, but Trump is very good at being Donald Trump. Yeah, I can't. Sometimes you and I have not argued, but I've said no, Veg, and no, Veg. On that, let's put it like this, Veg. I'm going to answer. Not that you asked to. I'm going to answer this way. It's certainly, as I said on a show, I guess maybe you missed it. It would be very hard for me to argue that Biden does understand with the way he's acting right now. So, I don't know that he doesn't. I know that he's not acting like he does unless he has some long-range plan. And you saw that, Brian. You saw that fall today, right? They worked out a compromise, supposedly, right? And you said it very early on. Brian, you can't compromise with evil. It can't be done. Okay, you can't. It's going to take away some of the goodness if you compromise. And what we're finding now is now the GOP doesn't have enough votes to get through what their group agreed to. So now, what does that mean? It means we're right back to what you said at this point, early on. We have to intelligently figure out a way that's still within our moral framework. And my moral framework is you shouldn't kill. Short of that, to figure out how we stop this thing that the Republican Party has brought to before we lose America as we know
I
it.
told
There you
Dave
are.
earlier
There you are.
today, folks. I said if I had to have a choice, and Dave earlier in the show was talking about choices, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Mo Brooks. I said if I had to choose between having the Chinese Communist government or the Republican Party run this country, I'd say I'm willing to abide by the Chinese because I just can't stand the other side. I would actually abide because I knew at least with the Chinese government there'd be some type of organization. I wouldn't want that government, but it's certainly to me far superior to that of the Trumpers.
And since we've had the communists on tonight, we've been talking about communists. I'm sure you remember, although there's a few years difference in our ages, better dead than red was, meaning I'd rather be that
Right.
at this point. And I don't know, I'm sure you saw the shirts, rather be red than a Democrat. That's how much we've changed. Yeah.
Right, it's huge.
Wow, it's interesting. Well, again, I'm just going to close with this. Thank everyone for being there. And you may have noticed we've changed the format of a show a little bit. We don't talk a lot, but I'm going to kind of explain what we're doing. I always think that's important. I thought we maybe got off base a little bit. And the reason was we had Trump. And with Trump, it was a show every week now. And now, we're trying a new format a little bit, which is basically, in essence, and we ran almost a full time with it, and we're continuing. We'll probably add a couple more wrinkles in it, ladies and gentlemen. But basically with Brian, what's concerning you, and I'll pick 2 to 3 articles, and we'll do more with your comments. And I want to say something that I learned a lot, that this audience taught me. As a speaker, as a teacher, I always felt you have to give me your undivided attention, right? And this audience has taught me that maybe that isn't necessarily true, because they're getting what we're talking about, but they're able to have a conversation, right, with each other. And I think that's important. And maybe, Brian, quite honestly, more important than anything you and I say on this show is that people that like and respect and due to geographical distances cannot get together. This is a place for them. I was watching how many people reached out tonight to Veg, or Keith when he was going through what he was going through. And that's really nice. So I thank you, Brian, for putting me on the show. I thank the people, for helping me maybe change my attitude a little bit. But mostly it's just nice to be with so many families. I know mine has been ripped asunder by politics. And you say, well, why, if you mention it, of course you care. I do not care. I really don't. If that's the route they have to go, that's the route they have to go. It's nice to have a new family. So I look at Divided We Stand as part of a new family. And I think it's a nice family because we don't have to agree on the little things, but we do have to agree on the big things, and that makes it nice.
I appreciate
Thanks,
it,
Brian.
Dave. Very kind words. Thank you. So, folks, maybe I'll end it this way. My first foray into YouTube, I remember, I think it was when Derived Energy died. It's like he was an atheist, antinatalist. And I used to watch his channel. It wasn't my favorite channel or anything like that. I had no relationship with the guy. I may have commented a couple times to him. But there was almost like a family type discussion between, different channels. And, he was arrested for having a joint in the Philippines or Indonesia. I think it was Indonesia. And then I think he took a bucket of water and he drowned himself in a bucket of water. Things were so bad they were going to put him in jail for some completely unreasonable amount of time. And he taught English there, something like that. But that was the first time that, I realized that YouTube kind of meant something. Now, of course, our page is a Facebook page, but we do our work on YouTube. And then we lost Steve McClung, which was Hellberg Lucy. Dave doesn't really know him. He might have seen some videos. Really good guy, and he was a big Bernie supporter, and he got really sick. He lived down actually near where Dave is now, and he lived in Virginia. And I actually made a video for him on one of my other channels. But as Dave was saying, you get to the point where it really is kind of like a family. And the reality is, I think what this whole thing with Trump and the Republicans has taught us is that, maybe the friends that we thought we had weren't really our friends. I mean, Dave trashed a lot. I mean, I say trash. He got rid of a lot of people who were on his friends list. And I, as you know, I basically shifted all of my political commentary from my personal page to Divided We Stand, because there was no sense in me doing it on my personal page, because I couldn't survive it. There was just too much tension with people. But you do find a family, and then when you do hear something that goes wrong, it really hits you, because we don't see each other physically. I mean, you see Dave and me, but
Do you have cooties, Brian? You keep itching.
I got allergies. So, it goes back to veg. Like veg. All of a sudden it comes out today and it says this happened to me. And these things happen, and it hits us because we really are family, and we are really a small, a coterie or whatever you want to call it of people who are of like minds, and it's a beautiful thing in a certain sense. I find people beautiful from the same political viewpoints. I mean, I've always been kind of a fair thing. I don't believe in one color, red is better than blue, and I get off on philosophies and things like that. That's what I really, really like. And it's being around you folks. It's just fantastic. And again, none of us really agree perfectly. David and I don't agree on everything, but it's a wonderful thing, because if there's one thing we can say, we have this. We have some kind of communication every Saturday night. We have the Facebook group, and it gives you something, there's some type of way that we commiserate, that if you're going to go down, and it's certainly possible, it's just the way life is, like Bukowski was saying, the spider and the fly. It's in the end we're all kind of doomed. I know that people don't really like the pessimism that I have in many cases, but there is something to be said for commiseration, and if you know that there are people with you going down, that's a turn on, that you're at least with these people. And you guys mean a lot. You guys and gals mean a lot to us. And we may only have 20 some people on during the night, but in a way that's better, because everybody gets to say, and we'll just keep doing this thing, because it's a big universe out there anyway, and we're just I know Dave wants to say something. I just know he's behind.
Well, what I want to do is, I think one of the things,
everybody likes saying stuff after I say stuff.
well, because you make us think. No, I'm not going to be really short. I'm really short on this. One of the things that and I know, we got to give a teaser sometimes for the next, show. Although, as I said, our people would probably show up next week. We are going to reveal how our esteemed host has a secret crush, not on Miss Taylor Greene, but on Miss Laura, the gun-toting there. So be there. Step away from the button, Dave. No, I can't do that.
Lauren
no.
Boebert.
Wait a minute. How I can't talk like Hal.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Is like when I I don't care how attractive somebody is, but if they are on the other political side, or they're doing something, I find that very I think is, at least it's from my perspective, that's just something that grows out of developing a philosophy in life, and living a code, that you finally say, no, that's just unacceptable. And That's a real dangerous mind there, that Lauren Boebert. She's a real ugly person in a
But
real
Brian,
sense.
I do have a question though. I mean, sometimes in the background you play music. The rare times we talk, and why do you have every time the song on? It's from the '60s called "Tell Laura I Love Her." What kind of meaning should I? Oh, get me out of here, will you? I'm done.
All right,
Go
he's
home.
talking too much. All right.
Goodbye,
All
peeps.
right, now I am actually going to sign off. Okay, let me first of all thank Dave. Really do appreciate Dave. It's always nice, and I'm going to sign off because I am getting kind of tired. I'm actually thirsty. I had a whole glass of water this time, and that was good. But I want to say thank you to everybody, and please, if this is your first time watching, please subscribe. We don't look for any kind of money. Just want you to click subscribe so you can get notifications if we do have a show. And if you are subscribed, don't forget that we have the Facebook group page. You know, keep in contact with us because people need each other. You know what I mean? They really, really do. We need each other, and that's kind of important. So, yeah, divided we stand, but we're united. It's just that we're divided from them, and you have to be because, as Dave said, there's no sense in making a deal with evil. Just, you know, I think Tolstoy said that, you know, there's evil out there, so the good, it's their duty to monotonal speech. Yeah, maybe I am. Sorry. Is Boebert the penis? I have no idea. So, but yeah, I guess that's the show. Thanks everybody, and we'll answer all those questions next week, or maybe you all will. Okay, Google it, Wikipedia it, and we'll figure it all out. All right, I think that's it. We're going to finish up.